Welcome back, everybody. Monday, May 15th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report. Here to talk to you about the latest news from Ukraine. As always, let's take a minute or two for folks to arrive. I will get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. And then, about 2 minutes, usually then the TikTokers and the Twitterers and the Twitchers and everybody else arrive. So in the meantime, there we go. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves, say where you're from. That's how we like to sort of start the show, which is always nice. And then in about 2 minutes' time, I will begin. So if you're watching this on video later, you can zoom ahead 2 minutes or so. So there. Anyway. Burp. Woo. Hello, all. Hello, all. Oh, man. It's a good news day. I think it's a very good news day, actually. A lot of good news today. Oh, get my microphone. Get my microphone on here. You guys can hear me today, I'm hoping. Since TikTok has been evil lately. I know you guys can hear me. TikTok mic has been evil lately. Good evening. I would block you. I remember you. Thank you, Stephen, for the gift. Appreciate that. Oh, hey, y'all. Oh, man. So what's going on, folks? Thank you, Tom. Look at the gifts already rolling in on TikTok. You're all so nice. Thank you. B. Smith. Who else is coming in here? Texas. Canada. We always have lots of Canadians, which I always love. UK. You guys saw Zelensky today. Very cool. Vermont, Mississippi. Dip. Grumpy. Anyway, like I said, we'll take another minute for folks to arrive. Worcester, I'm going to guess, because that's the way we pronounce it out east of the U.S. Oh, hey. Oh, thank you for the gift there. Who was the gift there? The little heart was from Kanelsi and Arkanod from Ukraine. Hey, Arkanod. Welcome. Привет. Ah, boy. All right. Oh, that's a cool gift. What the heck was that? What the heck was that? What was that? Who gave that? Oh, that was Edsel. Wow, thank you, Edsel. I didn't even know what that was. Sorry, Edsel gave you a very cool gift on TikTok, but for a second there, I was like, I thought it was TikTok like giving us some gift or something for a second there. That's wild. Oh, Brando's here in Virginia with my Ukrainian husband and mother-in-law. We'll say "Привет" for all. I can't speak. I could speak a little more Russian than Ukrainian, but I don't want to offend them with Russian. Well, I can do that. I say "Очень приятно." I just don't know how to say it in Ukrainian. But "Привет" is about all I've got in Ukrainian. All right, guys, let me get rolling here. So thank you for the gifts. Lots of gifts this afternoon. Thank you, Happy Beach, John McCarthy, Ethan Clark, Nicholas. Everybody, thank you. Edsel. All right, guys, I am John Aravosis. Welcome to the show. This is my daily show where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Today's show, Monday, is always a little bit different because I will, of course, include the weekend news as well. Thank you for the hearts there. Crazy American and Kate both sending gifts there. Chief with the little pandas. I will try to... I might as well introduce that now. I always try to do a quick thank you when folks do the gifts on TikTok. Also for the super chat, super stickers. Thank you for the ice cream cone there, Aviv. Super chat, super stickers on YouTube. The gifts are actually very important because they do support my work. I've been doing this full-time since the war broke out, so all the way back in February of last year, and I actually do it full-time. So this is my job. And frankly, the way I'm able to do it is because you guys have been giving me gifts and supporting me so I can pay my bills. So thank you very much. That's why I like the gifts. So please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok. And as I said, I will always try to do a shout out when stuff flies up on the screen. And for YouTube, same thing, super chat, super stickers. As a thank you for the super chat questions, I will always get to those next in line. So I will get to those immediately, basically. So the way the show works, thank you, Hazel. The way the show works is I do about half hour of news, sometimes longer, because like today, there's a good amount of news. So the news might go a little longer. And then the second half of the show, I will take your guys' questions. Other than the super chat questions that we'll jump in immediately. All right, let's get rolling here. So it is day 445 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation. Thank you, Dave, for the target and user for the. Oh, wait, is that user with the? Hang on, real quick here. Oh, it is user 67 with the Cooper Skates home. Thank you, guys. Day 445 of Putin's 10-day military operation. I do it as a joke, but it's also really important to remember These guys were so proud of themselves. They thought they were going to win this thing in 10 days, and it's now been a year and 2 months. So, that's a testament to their hubris. Thank you, Brando, for that very generous gift. I know that that little travel thing was very nice of you. Thank you. It's a testament to the hubris, basically, the pride of the Russians, but also the tenacity of the Ukrainians. Because let's face it, I mean, lots of countries have lots of weapons from the West, and I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan were two good examples. Lots of training, lots of weapons, and guess what? They didn't do so well. Ukrainians actually knew how to use them. All right, let's jump right in here. So a couple little stories, and then we're going to talk about Zelensky's big day or weekend in Europe, where he got a lot of promises for a lot of really good aid, especially Germany. Germany came through on this one very big. But Russia, let me start a little bit quick. So this weekend was the Eurovision Song Contest. We did a nice hangout of all of us on Saturday afternoon, just hanging, watching the show together, which was really fun. It's a big international song competition, mostly of Europeans, Israel too. Very big in Europe, not as big in America. But it's super big. I mean, it's super big in Europe. Okay. This is, I would say it's in a funny way, like our Oscars, even though it's not, but it's very important, right? Thank you for that really generous computer gift. Was it Brando? Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And the Russians know it, and the Russians are pissed because they got kicked out last year because of the invasion of Ukraine. So the Russians couldn't compete again this year because of the invasion of Ukraine. So you know what they did? The Ukrainian group was getting ready to sing. 10 minutes before the Ukrainian group sang, the Russians bombed their hometown. Okay. This is in like Western Ukraine. There's no reason for them to bomb these guys' hometown. It was not a strategic target, nowhere near the war zone. The Russians bombed it literally 10 minutes before these guys started to sing because they wanted to freak them out and screw up their performance and basically do a, F you to the Eurovision folks. I mean, I tell you guys that I try to bring up stories that I think you should know, but also stories that tell you more about what's going on. And I think a story like this is really important because it tells you who the Russians really are. Okay. They not only attacked civilians, which they did by going after this town, but they attacked a little village in Ukraine simply because the performers, thank you, Grace, for that. Simply because, and Achilles, thank you, because the performers are from that town. They wanted to kill their friends and family back home. I mean, it's just, yeah, we're not dealing with good people. Let's put it that way. Ukraine, the good news, the land in Ukraine is finally drying. That is important because you know that a couple different factors have been playing into the counteroffensive. Thank you, Brando and B. Smith. Brando especially, that was very generous of you. Thank you. The counteroffensive is the big pushback by Ukraine that we're waiting for, right? A number of factors play into this, including, importantly, the weapons Ukraine gets, right? How many of the tanks, for example, has Ukraine received? How many of the other weapons? If more are coming soon, maybe they want to hold off a little and get more of them. It is also super important what the weather is like. Thank you, Michael, for the hat there. It is important that the ground be dry. Because the military experts, thank you, Cecil, for the heart there. The military experts will tell you that if the ground is wet, tanks can't go over it. So the tanks end up having to go on the main roads. And the tanks go on the main roads. Imagine rural areas especially, right? The main road is this open road connecting towns. It is a great place to line all the tanks up and then have the Russians just come in and blow it up. So the Ukrainians don't want that to happen. They don't want to provide these open targets. Thank you, Louis, for the flowers there. They don't want to provide these open targets. So they're waiting, we think, they're waiting for the ground to firm up, which gives them a lot more maneuverability. They can go through forests. They can go through lots of places, right? Well, in any case, for the first time, I was seeing reports today that the ground in Ukraine, especially around Bakhmut, interestingly, in the east, is drying up. So that may mean that we're getting closer to the counteroffensive. Institute for the Study of War. Oh, my dog. Okay, Sash, there you go. Sasha's meowing. Sasha's whining at me because she wanted to be covered up by my jacket. My dog, who's on my chair next to me here. Institute for the Study of War, which is a very good defense think tank here in the States, said in their assessment that last week, around 10 square miles of land around Bakhmut were liberated by the Ukrainians. I don't know what 10 square miles is in kilometers, but it's probably not great. Thank you for that. Wait, who was that really quick? Come on. TikTok did this change that makes it there. Michael, thank you. TikTok did a change recently that makes it extremely difficult to tell who's given gifts. I don't know why they did it, but I used to be able to swipe to the right and I could see big comments with you guys. So I apologize if you have a gift that comes up and I miss it because TikTok is TikTok doesn't hire me to tell them how to do their stuff. But in any case, so Bakhmut. We'll talk a little bit about Bakhmut first because Bakhmut has been so in the news. Bakhmut is a small Ukrainian town. I mean, town of 60,000 people, now down to 6,000 people here in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainians don't like it when we say it, but most of us in the West, Western military foreign policy experts, do not think Bakhmut is strategically important, okay? It does not really help the Russians to take this town in their overall battle. I mean, the Russians want to get the town eventually because they want to get all of eastern Ukraine. But it doesn't help them get this town in terms of going after the nearby towns. So it's not really clear why the Russians have spent nearly 11 months trying to take this town. Imagine 11 months trying to take a town of 60,000 people, right? Not a great call of confidence for the Russians, right? Vote of confidence. In any case, what's been happening in the last week, which is really interesting, is last week, May 9th, was the 1 mile. Well, I know what 1 mile is. I just don't know how to do the square. I know what a mile is in kilometers. I don't know how to do the square kilometer, square mile conversion off the top of my head. Thank you. Sorry, there was a gift there, John, with the hearts. Thank you, John, for the hearts. But bottom line here, the Russians should have won this town months ago. We thought the Russians were going to win it months ago. Putin had ordered his troops to win it last week because last week was the big celebration where Russia pretends they won World War II all by themselves. And it's a big nationalist celebration. And now that Russia is becoming more fascist and more dictatorial again, it's even more important for them to play this whole, World War II, fighting the Nazis. We are great, blah, 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 this kind of thing, right? So Putin had ordered them reportedly to win the town over by last May 9th. Thank you for the bumper cars there, Hazel. And they didn't, not only did they not get it by May 9th, which was now, 6 days ago, they, thank you, Aunt Deb, they are losing ground now. Now, this isn't a ton of ground that the Russians lost last week, but the point is they were ordered last week to take this town. And instead of taking the town, they lost land. So not great for the Russians, right? Another really wild story from this weekend. And this one, let's say that this one, we don't know what happened yet. We don't know if the Russians did it or the Ukrainians did it. Either way, it's a disaster for Russia. The Russians lost five planes, or air units, if you want to call it, because they were helicopters and planes this weekend. 4 of them at least were lost in one spot. I don't know if the 5th one was lost in the same spot. Sort of northeastern Russia, near Ukraine, I should say. So right off of Ukraine, but in Russia, there were 2 bombers coming in to bomb Ukraine, okay? They had 2 helicopters with them. And the helicopters, these are all Russian, the helicopters they had with them were very high-tech jamming helicopters, and they flew high intentionally so they could get greater distance, right? Because, if you're down low, you can only see so much of the earth. If you're high up, you can see more of the earth, right? And the idea was these helicopters were to jam the incoming Ukrainian missiles so the incoming Ukrainian missiles couldn't shoot the planes out of the sky. Well, all we know for sure is all 4 planes got simultaneously blown out of the sky at the same time, the 2 planes and the 2 helicopters. The Russians immediately, now mind you, when does Russia come out and admit anything that Ukraine does as being right? They don't. The Russians immediately came out and said, Kukla, this is a little early for you. Mom's dog, who's adorable, I will admit, gets into a needy mode. And I did a good walk today, took her to the park, sat out back in the sun. But she's getting, just so you know, if she gets needy again, I may have to pick her up to shut her up. But what the Russians came out and did was immediately the Russians came out and said, oh, the Ukrainians shot down those planes. Well, why would Russia come out and give Ukraine credit for shooting down 4 planes at one time, right? Killing the pilots, by the way, which is a big deal. Not only were the planes destroyed, but the pilots were killed. The pilots and the crew were killed. That is considered a very big deal because, you can build a new plane, although it's a pain in the butt, but these pilots have to go for years and years and years of training. And of course, the longer they've been flying, the more experience they've got. You can't just make that up in a new pilot. He or she has got to fly again for like 10, 20 years. So big deal that these guys got killed. The Russians admitted it immediately. Oh, Ukrainians shot them down. Well, the thinking is a lot of people think that the Russians actually shot them down. Yevgeny Prigozhin came out. He's the, I think Prigozhin did, I think, come out and say that the Russians themselves, he did actually. Prigozhin himself came out. He's the guy who heads up the Wagner group, which is the mercenary group the Russians have that are fighting in Ukraine. He came out and said, they're lying. We did not, his own government is lying. The Ukrainians did not shoot it down. We shot down our own planes. Now, We don't know if the Russians were so bad at this that they shot down their own planes. We don't know if the Ukrainians are so good at this that they shot down the Russian planes. What we do know is either the Russians are totally inept militarily, or the Ukrainians are really freaking good to the point where now aircraft flying in Russia are in serious danger. Either way, this is a really bad story for Russia and a very good story for Ukraine. Another bad story for Russia. This, I believe, happened yesterday because I saw the story yesterday or Saturday. 2 Russian military commanders were killed in eastern Ukraine, and the Russian Defense Ministry actually confirmed it. That's good news for Ukraine. The big story I want to talk, I've got a lot of other news today too, but the big story to talk about right now is Zelensky, president of Ukraine, was in Europe this weekend, did a surprise trip to Europe, actually the rest of Europe, right? Ukraine's Europe. He likes to sort of do surprise trips because it's safer, because the thought is that obviously you don't want to give the Russians, a week or 2 or whatever to get assassins in place and this kind of stuff. At least that we know. He went to Rome, Italy, met with the prime minister, Giorgia Meloni. He went to Germany, met with Scholz and other Germans, and received actually a prize, a Charlemagne Prize, which is considered very prestigious in Europe. He went to Paris and met with Prime Minister Macron of France. And then he went to London, and he was in London today. Might have been there yesterday, but he was there today with Rishi Sunak, who's the Prime Minister of Britain. Now, across the board, let me go through the different countries. Really good announcements. Yeah, Britain was today. Thank you, Paul. Really good announcements across the board. Thank you, Tom Clark, for the hearts. Let me go through some of them, okay? Sunak in Great Britain. They take him to the Prime Minister's country residence called Chequers, very famous place. But what was interesting about it is that it is a location that is particularly thought of as being associated with Winston Churchill, right? Big wartime prime minister during World War II for Great Britain. And really, sort of in many ways, the sort of focal point of the war for Europe, really, overall, as far as the Allies. Takes him there. They have a meeting in a room that is a room very associated with Churchill, because it's the room that Churchill would do his famous radio addresses from. Sunak, when he meets Zelensky, they give each other a bear hug, and there is this photo. Hold on, I'm going to see if I can pull it up really quick, because I tweeted it today, so I'm sure I've got it here. But it's important to see the photo, because you look at this photo and you go, damn. I mean, this was a very good meeting between these two men. These men have a very good relationship, which is good. I have said before that one of the important things you've got to realize with here we go. One of the important things you've got to realize with politics is the personal relationship. Personal relationships really matter, and it's important that these guys and gals get to meet each other. Look at this photo of Zelensky meeting Sunak. I mean, look at this. Look at the way Zelensky's holding him. I mean, it's tremendous. And even Zelensky's face too. You can tell Zelensky's happy. Look at this picture, guys. I mean, absolutely astounding photo. But again, the sort of the intensity of the hug. First of all, Zelensky is ecstatic here that that this is about. And of course, my light's on, because what iPhone wouldn't have the light go on? It drives me nuts that it does that. But Zelensky is ecstatic because they got the missiles from the Brits last week, the cruise missiles, and they already used one and really did some serious damage to the Russians. But that relationship is very important and very good. And Giorgia Meloni of Italy has been really good. Actually, she surprised all of us. We thought she was going to be a disaster. She's in coalition with some people that are kind of fascists. I mean, it's not good. She's been amazing. Macron, the French, this way, that way. But they've been very good. The French have been great. I mean, but they just occasionally go bad, and then we kind of bring them back. The Germans, I think, kind of started pretty bad and now are amazing, which is great. And the Brits started amazing and still are amazing. And especially because we started with Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister with the white hair that was all over the place, who was very great, very good on Ukraine. I mean, bad on a lot of stuff. He got forced out of office, but on Ukraine, he was amazing. You started with him, and now you got Rishi Sunak, totally different guy. And he's equally amazing, right? And basically approved the cruise missiles that were used last week in Ukraine. So kind of amazing all around. Anyway, so a couple different things here. As far as the Britons, Sunak, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, of the UK, says that pilot training will begin soon. He had promised in February, or announced in February, they were going to start training Ukrainian pilots. That training will begin soon on flight training. According to the UK government via Politico, the UK announced it would soon begin an elementary flying phase for cohorts of Ukrainian pilots to learn basic training. The training would go hand in hand with UK efforts to work with other countries on providing F-16s. Now, he did say that, Britain doesn't have any F-16s, so it's not like they can give any, but they're working with a coalition of countries. And, this was just more when you see sort of France. Actually, I'll tell you right now, France said the same thing. Macron said we would be happy to do training on fighter jets. Now, for the French, it might be trainings on the Mirage fighter jets, probably would be because that's their big fighter jet. But the point is, the French and the UK are moving ahead with training Ukrainian pilots on using Western fighter jets. I saw the Economist, the magazine, which I wrote for at one point, but the Economist, a very prestigious international foreign affairs magazine. Their defense editor was saying today on Twitter that basically he would not be surprised if Ukraine gets F-16s by Christmas or by New Year's. Again, it's not right now, but by the end of the year would still be a big deal. Because also we're already May. It's already 5 months into the year, 7 months from now. That was a huge deal. The Brits are also going to provide hundreds of attack drones that have a range. Listen to this, though. A range of over 200 kilometers. Now, 200 kilometers, I'm going to guess, puts you at 130 miles, 140 miles. Yeah. 120 miles. Excuse me. It'll be 120 because 100 kilometers is 60 miles. So 120 miles, 200 kilometers. That's a really good distance. And the Brits gave them hundreds of these, which is great. They're giving them hundreds of air defense missiles. Then you go listen to this. Okay, the drones. I was looking around at some of the different news sources. Then you go to the New York Times, and the New York Times does a story about what's going on today with Zelensky going to Europe. And they had a specific site from a Danish army intelligence officer, Jacob Kierkegaard. I love that somebody's name is still Kierkegaard in Europe today. What a great name. And talking about the long-range drones. Oh, thank you. Now, I forgot to bring those up. Thank you, Becca, for the judge voting. I totally didn't realize those existed when we did Eurovision this weekend. I would have totally brought those up. So thank you for giving me one. I appreciate that. Listen to this. So we're talking about the new drones. Britain is giving Ukraine hundreds of drones that can go over 200 kilometers or 120 miles. Listen to why these matter. Via the New York Times, former Danish army intelligence officer Jacob Kierkegaard said the long-range drones are of particular threat to the Russian Navy's Black Sea fleet in the Crimean port of Sevastopol. Sevastopol, all the way down here, and other sites in and near Crimea, including the Kerch Strait Bridge, all the way over here, that connects occupied Crimea to Russia. Russia's over here, but you can't see it on my little map here. Oh, thank you there. Because I had him for the heart. So that gets interesting. The Kerch Bridge, you may recall, got attacked last October. So everyone assumes it was the Ukrainians. Big explosion. I mean, really put the bridge out of commission for a while. This bridge is hugely important because think about it. This is an actual, eventually maybe I'll get a better map, but I like my t-shirt map. This is water. This is all water. This is Russian land, right? So Russian land comes up here, and then you've got Russia bordering Ukraine, but this is all water. So these areas of Ukraine occupied by Russia, they get all their supplies across the Kerch Bridge. The troops that are here get their supplies across the Kerch Bridge. So that bridge is really important. The other way people around here get their supplies is the land bridge connecting to Russia. So Russia is right here. That's another reason the Russians stole all of this territory from Ukraine, is because they wanted to make sort of a contiguous connection here with Russia. Okay. So what this former Danish intelligence officer is saying is that the new drones that the Brits have given the Ukrainians will make it basically put Sevastopol, the major Russian Black Sea port. It is a major Russian naval port at threat, but also the Kerch Bridge at threat, which is great. France says they will train and equip several Ukrainian battalions with dozens of armored vehicles and light tanks, including the AMX-10RC, and France is willing to train Ukrainian fighter jet pilots on French soil. So that's good. Hang on. Germany coming up. Germany's great what they promised. Hang on. Germany, Zelensky was awarded the International Charlemagne Prize of Aachen 2023. It is the oldest and best-known prize awarded for work done in the service of European unification. Now, think about that, okay? the Germans gave Zelensky a prize that is, thank you, Cliff. I'll get to your question in a second here. Cliff just did a super chat question. Thank you for that. The Germans give Zelensky a prize that is a prize you give every year to the person who has done outstanding service for European unification. Okay? That is, thank you, Stephen, for the let's go. That is a real slap at the Russians. It is also a hell of a statement for, thank you, Happy Beach, for the confetti. It is a hell of a statement for Ukraine's eventual admittance to the European Union, because they're saying, well, let me get a second what they're saying, and I think NATO as well. I mean, the very point of saying Ukraine has done a lot to, actually more than anyone this year, Zelensky, to unify Europe, he has. I mean, he's unified Europe because Europe is now a fighting bloc as one, assisting this war in European territory. But the flip side of that is also that Zelensky is part of Europe, that Ukraine is part of Europe, that the unification of Ukraine into, I think there's a leitmotif here, or a subtle thing going on here that's talking about Ukraine's integration with Europe, which is why I think this is actually a slap at Russia. It is a perhaps not so subtle message to Ukraine that Germany will have its, which I hope is true, that Germany will have Ukraine's back as far as going into joining the European Union, joining NATO. Very interesting across the board that's the reason for the prize, I thought. I really did. I read that and I went, okay, that's kind of wild. Sorry, Cliff has got a super chat question. Do you think Biden is lying low on Ukraine due to the debt ceiling crisis? How will this impact the economic packages to Ukraine and how military loans? I don't know if Biden's lying low. Look, Biden has laid low in general on Ukraine. Thank you, Lori. Actually, Biden lies low on a lot of stuff. Look, Biden is not a great communicator. He might have been once upon a time. And Biden would fluff up, or would kind of screw up when he would speak earlier, meaning years ago. He was kind of known for making mistakes when he would talk, sort of famous, embarrassing ones, but that's fine. But Biden, in his age now, his advanced age, he's not a good speaker, I don't think. And they intentionally don't put him out there saying things. I agree to some degree with that choice. Clearly, the White House has decided, or Biden himself has decided, not to be out there. I think he should be out there more. I think you just look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump was out there every day. I mean, he didn't care. I mean, I'm not saying that's something we should emulate, but the point is Trump didn't care. You just accept Biden for his flaws. You say, look, he's a little old and he talks a little old. Big deal, right? And sometimes he says things that are a little off, but, he's doing good stuff. Thank you for the Pegasus. That is very cool, the unicorn. Hang on, who was that? Nick. Thank you, Nick. That's one of my faves. But, so I think Biden should be out there more. I don't think it's related to debt crisis. I don't think it's anything else. Biden just has not been out there talking about Ukraine every day. And I think he should, frankly, because Republicans do this. I mean, literally, I am still hearing people talk about COVID. Thank you for the gifts there. Oop, who's the Kathleen? Thank you, Kathleen, for those, for the waving 10 out of 10s. Thank you. And the multiples. Thank you. I still see people on Twitter arguing about COVID. Thank you, Kathleen. You're crazy. You're crazy, Kathleen. I appreciate it. Thank you. Kathleen's like throwing up the gifts. I appreciate that. That's very generous of you. But the COVID, the COVID conspiracy people, they're still arguing COVID. I mean, and again, I'm not saying you emulate the lie aspect, but you emulate the tenacity. That's what you should be sort of admiring here. Thank you, Inspired Woman, for the galaxy. I find that often people whose politics I don't agree with, they're very good at just nailing you and nailing you and nailing you. Up, another cool live show thing. Who put that one up? Oh, that was Inspired Woman. Thank you. That was like Edsels earlier. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. But they're tenacious about their message. And the point isn't whether they're lying or not about the message. I could do a whole show about messaging because I do messaging for a living and I've done messaging for a living. To get your message across, you have to repeat it again and again and again. And I find sometimes the bad guys are very good at doing that. And the good guys often think a good message will sell itself. Well, guess what? Good messages don't sell themselves. You've got to sell good messages. And just the same way that bad guys will sell bad messages. In any case, so yeah, I don't think that's an issue. As far as the debt ceiling, I don't think the debt ceiling is going to impact Ukraine directly. Thank you, Chase, for the air dancer. In part because honestly, the government can spend. I mean, our government, ever since Bill Clinton balanced the budget. Bill Clinton had a surplus of $400 billion with a B when he left office. Since then, we haven't had such a thing. There have been a lot of crises since then. There's been 9/11. There's been the 2008, 2009 economic crisis. We then had COVID. But we also had a lot of tax cuts, and the tax cuts were huge, $2 trillion each time that blew holes in the budget. But bottom line is, we've never had a budget be in balance. So my point here is, in an emergency, there's really no problem getting the money because you can always add to your debt. But that's not a great thing for the long-term help of the nation. So if we need money for Ukraine, we can get it. Yes. Thank you, Bonnie, for the fall colors. Not fall, but I still think they're pretty. Cheryl for the flowers. Let me go on with a little. Oh, the German. So sorry, real quick. We were talking about the German package. Zelensky was in Germany this weekend, meets with the Chancellor Scholz, the head of Germany, and gets a wonderful aid package, 2.7 billion euros. I'm going to guess that's what in dollars? How much is 2.7 billion euros in dollars? 2.9. Okay, almost $3 billion with a B. 2.7 billion euros. Aid package worth that amount. It includes 30 additional Leopard tanks. I think they're Leopard 1 tanks, but still they're tanks. 20 armored fighting vehicles, 16 air defense systems, more than 200 drones, and a slew of other arms and ammunition. The defense experts I saw were saying this weekend on Twitter, were saying that this was huge. I mean, people who admitted to not being very happy with Germany sometimes on Ukraine, said this was huge. This was absolutely huge. This was a hugely significant aid package that Germany put out this weekend. So yeah, exactly. Bones saying that's a solid outlay. No, it's very much so. People, again, I follow like the top defense people online, and they were all in agreement that this was a big deal what Germany did. So again, kudos to Germany. I don't think the Abrams are. Sam is saying on Twitch the Abrams have started arriving. I don't think so. I don't mean to contradict you, Sam, but 31 Abrams arrived in Poland for training. So these are Abrams that are not supposedly, who knows, right? Supposedly not going to Ukraine, but are in Europe for the Ukrainians to train on them. But supposedly the first American Abrams tanks would not arrive until the fall. But, let's see. Right? I mean, let's see. Up. Thank you, Joanna. I was just about to talk about that. I'm going to put Joanna's message up. Thanks, Joanna. So interesting. Okay, Sam is saying 3 confirmed deliver for what I'm told. That's interesting. Well, look, I would hope, here's the interesting thing. I would hope that we're not telling the truth publicly on everything. Meaning, let's not tell Russia that the tanks are already there, right? I mean, we didn't tell Russia that the British cruise missiles were there until the story came out last week. And literally like the next day or two, the Ukrainians came out and just blew up something of the Russians. So there was no time for the Russians to get ready for it, right? But so that would be great news if it's true, Sam. And I would say that it's not ridiculous to think it might be true, because maybe the U.S. has some that we were able to ship over. And if we did ship it over, maybe we don't want the Russians to know. Maybe at some point we want, for example, the story blew up about the missiles. The thinking is that the reason even the cruise missiles, those cruise missiles that the Brits sent last week, Storm Shadow, that can go 200 miles or 300 kilometers, huge deal. I mean, they put the bridges at risk. They put boats and subs at risk in Sevastopol. They put a lot of Russian command and control, which are basically the headquarters for the military, at risk. Fuel, food, military barracks. I mean, really dangerous. The thinking was that perhaps that story was leaked to the media in order to freak the Russians out. Because, I mean, right before the counteroffensive, right, we all sort of think the counteroffensive is coming soon. Maybe Zelensky will delay it a month or two. Who knows? But we think it's coming soon. It freaks the Russians out. It scares the troops. It makes the Russians, for example, now have to move their stuff back because they thought the Ukrainians had missiles that could go maybe 60 miles, maybe 100 miles, but not 200 miles. Now they're having to take their munitions, their weapons, and move them back. They're like artillery shells, their weapon storage, their fuel storage. Having to change all of that now is a disaster for the Russians, right? Because it's not just you move the storage. You've got the whole logistical system to move that stuff. You've got the trucks and you've got the drivers and you've got the trains and the schedules. Total disaster. So in any case, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we did give some tanks already to the Ukrainians and we're waiting for the story to kind of blow up publicly. So the Russians will go like, wait, what? There are Abram tanks there? Who knows? I mean, I don't want to put it out there that it's happening, but if we were smart, hopefully we'd play some games like that. Now, let me do you a really quick pitch for my Discord. It's my one pitch during the show for this, but I have a Discord community, discord.aravosis.com. You can also find the link at aravosis.com, or you guys on TikTok can find it in my profile. Go to the Linktree link in my profile, click it, and it'll bring up all my links. One of them is the Discord. It's a really cool chat community. It's free. You can certainly become a paying member if you want. I wouldn't mind if you did. Kind of like Patreon. I've got my Patreon there. Patreon's been playing games lately with Ukrainian creators, so I'm kind of staying away from Patreon. But if it's the easiest thing to do and you want to use Patreon, go ahead and use it. It's just a way of contributing each month. Thank you for the stars there, Dawn. I appreciate that. And Martin for the ice cream cone. But the other way you can contribute is join my Discord community. It's free. But there's also a way, once you join, you'll see, of being able to pay every month for it if you want, automatic payment. It is cheaper if you do it via your computer. It's not terribly easy. I helped my sister do it this weekend on her iPad. We ended up having to use the Chrome browser and it worked, but it wasn't fun. On your computer, it's a lot easier and it's cheaper signing up on your computer. Your iPhone or your iPad will probably throw in 30% more to pay for the Apple charge, because Apple charges for their store. It's kind of a pain. Thank you, B. Smith. In any case, the Discord, one of the cool things we got on the Discord is auctions. And you guys have already got the list there. Joanna put up, I'm going to show you a couple of things. We do auctions for Ukraine of cool stuff that I've gotten from Ukraine. I bought basically from Ukraine. Most of it's, I think almost, I don't think, well, no, a couple things. We got a couple donations from soldiers that we actually are selling stuff for the troops and sending the money back to the troops, part of it. Thank you for the hat there, Azamak. But I'm selling this stuff. Half of the proceeds will go to me. And some people say, why? Well, why? Because I'm doing this full time. And this is my job. And literally nobody's paying me. You guys are paying me. There's no big rich people in the sky that are saying, John, here's how you will pay your mortgage and your bills. You guys are the ones that do that with your benefits. So thank you for that, with your support. So that's the first thing. Half the proceeds go to me. The other half I send to Ukraine. I mean, I could take 100% because this is just, most of it's stuff I buy in Ukraine, but I wanted to help Ukraine with this. And we've sent, I'd say now maybe $8,000 or $10,000 of the auction money has gone to Ukraine. We've also raised about $90,000 to $100,000 overall for Ukraine, not including the auctions. Those are direct fundraising I've done from you guys, where 100% of the money goes to Ukraine. So keep that in mind too. In any case, let me show you the auction stuff we've got currently going. These auctions go till Wednesday. Once you sign up for the Discord, it's free. You can check out the auction stuff on the left-hand side and bid. There's VIP auctions, which are for the paid members, the public auctions for everybody. Among the cool things, cool Ukrainian fridge magnet Christmas ornaments. I really like. It says Happy Holidays on the bottom. Oh, thank you for the gold showering hazel. You'd have to see them in person. Actually, see on YouTube, you can tell the colors better. It's a very nice dark color. Looks less dark. Oh, actually, you can see a little bit there. And says Happy Holidays in Ukrainian. Was it Veselich Zviat? That's going to be my guess as to how to say it. Ukrainian military patch. These are really nice. Vlad got into trouble actually for exporting these from Ukraine. The Ukrainian customs called him and was not happy because they're real Ukrainian military patches. But he explained that we were auctioning them off abroad to make money that we're channeling back to Ukraine. So they were happier when they heard that. But this is kind of a neat one. I like this. They're the ones that go on the jackets or here. One of my favorite things, a piece of a Russian fighter jet that was shot down over Ukraine. We've got the whole story on this thing. It's a neat, I don't know if I've got my pen handy. I like sort of clicking on this one. I had a pen earlier, but I'll use my glasses. Yeah, you can kind of hear. I like this because it's titanium, and it's neat because it's super light. But when you try to bend it, you cannot bend this thing because it's a piece of a fighter jet. Su-30 SM fighter jet. We know the name of the pilot. We know the jet. I've got a whole fact sheet about it. Anyway, this is up for auction. Very cool. Two more things I'll show you and then we'll go. Oh, the t-shirt. The t-shirt's totally, I love this. This t-shirt is actually a size, I'd say it's a large. It's a medium large. It claims to be, for the Ukrainians out there, don't get mad at me. It claims to be an extra large. It's from Ukraine. I tried it on. It ain't an extra large. It's a medium large or a large, right? So an ML or an L. It's not an extra large, but it's cool because it's the tractor pulling the tank stamp. And it says "Good evening from Ukraine" on the top. See, "Good evening from Ukraine." But it's the tractor pulling the tank, and it's dedicated. It's the commemorative stamp showing the Ukrainian farmers who were towing all the Russian tanks at the beginning of the war. Remember, there were all those really cool videos? The back of it, I don't have it handy, but the back of it on the back shoulder also has a picture of like of a tank drawn with the Ukrainian flag and has the same writing that says, "Good evening, we are from Ukraine." Anyway, very cool shirt. And the last thing I will show you is a Patron mug. Patron is the mine. I have to show each of you, is the mine sniffing dog profiting from the war. Yeah, it's called Helping the War because 50% of this auction is going to help the Ukrainians. And actually, lately, we've been using the money to help the Ukrainian troops. We've been helping them get trucks. We've been helping them get drones. We've been helping them make camouflage nets. We got them drone extenders, which help the drones go much farther. So that's what happens when people bid on these. Now, I saw Troll was going crazy, but they like to do that. So, but anyway, check this out. It's Patron, and it says Ukraina on top, Ukraine, and it's he's a famous dog in Ukraine because he's a bomb sniffer, and he sniffs bombs and mines and things. And super famous. I mean, he's met the various heads of state. I mean, all this kind of stuff, and very famous in Ukraine. Cute dog, little Jack Russell. Anyway, you get it. Go to my Discord, check it out, discord.aravosis.com. You can find the link in my profile on TikTok. Click the link tree, sign up there. You guys can just go to aravosis.com and sign up, and you will join the community for free. And if you would like to, I'm trying to get 2 people per show to sign up. Again, you can use Patreon. I've got the Patreon link there too at aravosis.com. Patreon's a pain, but it's easy to use. If you have to, use Patreon. I'm just afraid someday. Now, Patreon is just for my journalism, I will say. Patreon is only to support my journalism. That's all. I can't use it for the other stuff because they're being evil, but that's fine. But if you go to Discord, like I said, Discord's probably a little safer, more secure. All right, let me get back with the news here. So thank you for that, guys. Russia claimed they downed a Storm Shadow cruise missile, one of the British cruise missiles. There is no proof of this. I will also say that they lie. And honestly, we don't tend to trust the Russians on these things. They lie about everything. So the fact that they say they downed one of the British cruise missiles is most likely a lie. Also, incredibly difficult to shoot these things down. They're very fast. They're very low. They're very stealthy, made of materials that so make it harder to see. In addition, the Ukrainians, as we know last week when they use the missile, they usually send up decoys with the missile, and the decoys are super high tech. They got some from the US and maybe some are from Europe as well, but they basically project an image onto the enemy radar or the enemy systems they're using that makes it look, the decoy just looks like a missile, right? This sort of small, say maybe this round, I saw a picture of one like this round and this long. But it has electronics on it that projects a radar image of all sorts of different planes. A B-52, a cruise missile, whatever you want it to be, that's what it can be. So the Ukrainians have been sending up these decoys at the same time the British missile, the actual missile comes, and the British missile you can barely see because of the technology on it, whereas the big cruise missiles you can see, and the Russians attack them first. So it is very unlikely that the Russians shot down a cruise missile. And as I said, you've got to keep in mind, the Russians lie about this stuff. I mean, literally, that is a huge tool of foreign policy for the Russians, is just lying about everything. So, and it's a boy that cries wolf problem, actually. The Russians lie so much about this stuff that in the end, even if they did do it, you wouldn't believe them. Now, real quick. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. NB Jazz is saying the consistent transparency around the money and where it's all going is appreciated, unfortunately lacking from others. I appreciate that. No, that's why and I will say, this is why I tell people, and I know I'll get pushback from some people like, oh, why do you take 50% of the auction money? And it's because quite literally, I'm doing this full time. I'm not doing my consulting I normally would do. Like normally I'd work for companies and nonprofits and charities and governments and everything else and make money. I'm not doing that. I'm doing the war. I'm trying to help the war, and I got to pay my bills. So yeah, but you guys have been great. But as I said, also, whenever we raise money for a specific cause, that's been 100%. So like last week we raised money, and we raised a third of the money. A third of the money came from Ukraine. About $4,000 or so was from Ukrainians in Ukraine. They needed another 2,000. They came to us. We raised the 2,000. It allowed the Ukrainians to buy a pickup truck for some Ukrainian troops that just were fighting in Bakhmut. Their truck got destroyed in Bakhmut, big surprise. And we raised the money to buy them a new truck. They said they got orders to go out Sunday night, last night. We're not going to tell you where they went, but they are now fighting again. and they've got our truck that we helped them. Those kind of auctions, I'm not taking a dime. It goes directly to Ukraine. I even give you my friend Vlad in Ukraine's PayPal, but also Vlad isn't taking any of the money either. So as I said, I would say 90,000. I've got the records, but 90,000 or so to 100, we've now raised, and 100% of that has gone to Ukraine. I'm not making money off of that. That's why I do these auctions, to help and everything. Anyway, you get it. But I appreciate you saying that, NB, because people don't know. It's something that's a whole other discussion for another day. Sorry. Thank you for the fireworks, Hazel. A lot of folks, it's usually on the left, actually. People on the right, conservatives, tend to understand that you need to pay people because they've got to do their job. People on the left in America often don't understand that. And it's not just me right now, but it's something I sort of tell folks is like, if you want people to do stuff, like quite literally, it's not like people are rich. If they're going to do an issue you want them to work on, you need to pay them because they've got to pay their bills. They've got to pay their loans. They've got to pay the electricity. They've got to buy food, right? Like they've got to actually pay for this stuff. They can't, none of us can quit our job and work full time on something for free because we'd go broke. But people don't, in politics, they never understand. Thank you, B. Smith. They never understand that. All right. Several drones, thank you, Ryan, for that. Several drones, Ukrainian drones, have struck a Russian airbase. Actually, you know what? Let me do a quick look and make sure I didn't miss anything here. Cliff. Oh, Matt is saying Discord's the best. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Thank you. I hadn't seen that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Drones. Several Ukrainian drones struck a Russian airbase 150 kilometers north of the Ukrainian border. 150 kilometers would be 90 miles or so. According to the British Defense Ministry, an AN-124 heavy transport plane was likely damaged, which is kind of funny and interesting because once again, the Ukrainians are showing that the Russians have got to be afraid, not just in Ukraine, but also stretching into Russia, which means they kind of now are worrying about everything around. So good of the Ukrainians to do that. A collaborator, interior minister, but that's not who he is. Thank you, Susan. You are always generous and hopefully still getting better. A collaborator in Luhansk. Luhansk is the Ukrainian territory, Eastern Ukraine. It's a state, I guess you'd call it, oblast or whatever. Luhansk, it's one of the territories that Russia has occupied and is claiming is now part of Russia, right? That they're claiming is Russia. And the Russians have, basically, they're claiming it's Russia, and they're claiming now they're states of Russia. So they've put in place Russian state officials, although they're local Ukrainians who are collaborators, meaning people who are willing to turn traitor on their own people to work for the Russians. And the guy who was the interior minister of that province just got blown up this weekend. He's injured, not dead, apparently, from what we hear. But the Ukrainians are masters at basically killing collaborators. They have been, usually it's it's more south of there. Usually it's been around Melitopol down here, okay? This was, I'm not sure where in Luhansk, but Luhansk is all the way over here. Melitopol's here. Around here, forget it. You do not want to be a collaborator down here. The Ukrainians will blow you up. Interesting that it happened out in Luhansk as well. Wagner. So Wagner news. This is kind of a weird story too. God, this is going long today. Gee, I didn't realize how long we were going today. My God, sorry. There's a lot of good news. It's really it's a lot of good news today, actually. The Wagner group. So the Wagner mercenary group they're soldiers for hire. Okay. Russian government. Well, it's private, but there's nothing private in Russia, right? It's all kind of run by Putin, et cetera. Putin, grifts off of all of it. But they are the mercenaries that are fighting in Ukraine. And there was a story this weekend in the Washington Post saying that the Wagner leader, well, actually, I wrote it down so I get it right, allegedly offered to give Russian troop locations to Ukraine in exchange for Ukrainian forces withdrawing from the area around Bakhmut. The Washington Post reported this last night, citing the leaked U.S. intelligence documents that 21-year-old, those documents that crazy kid, the 21-year-old leaked and put on the Discord, right? The sort of neo-Nazi kid. What is interesting about this is, so the claim is, not the claim, let me put this way. What U.S. intelligence heard from the Ukrainians, whether we bugged the Ukrainians, whether we talked to them, but what we heard from the Ukrainian government was that Prigozhin, the head of this military group of Russians fighting in Bakhmut, had offered to provide the locations of the actual Russian troops, right? Not his troops, but the Russian Ministry of Defense troops. So it'd be like the U.S. Army versus the Blackwater or whatever, right? Of the actual main Russian military, if the Ukrainians withdrew from around Bakhmut, because Bakhmut was the area his men was fighting to preserve his own men. Either, let me put it this is sort of a legal thing where we sort of say hearsay is allowed, but not for the underlying truth of it, meaning in this case, we don't know if he's telling the truth. We don't know whether Prigozhin was actually saying, I will help you, right, if you move your men, or whether this was a trick that Putin has set up. And Putin was saying, hey, let's trick the Ukrainians, tell them this, and we'll actually ambush them or something, right? So we don't know. I absolutely believe Prigozhin said this. I believe the Ukrainians were telling the truth when they told the Americans wrote this in a classified document. We just don't know, like I said, whether Prigozhin meant it or whether Prigozhin was actually telling a lie that Putin was telling him to tell. Prigozhin, of course, denied it today, but so what? Russia has arrested a former U.S. embassy employee for conspiracy today. No word if the embassy employee is American. I'm guessing not, although his first name was Robert, but his last name was like Shogun or something. It looked Russian. I'm guessing he was Russian. What I see happening there is, I think, and big surprise, the Russians have learned that kidnapping Americans or kidnapping people Americans care about is a growth industry. And I think they're going to keep now kidnapping American embassy employees, because think of, like, if you want to work for the U.S. embassy anywhere in the world and the U.S. doesn't come to bat for you when the government goes after you, people aren't going to want to work for the U.S. embassy. So we are seeing, I warned about this. Like I said, Brittany Griner, I understand helping her, but that was going to set up a precedent that you would attack Americans, you take us hostage, and our government is going to cave, and we're going to buy you off. Well, we bought off and we got Brittany. Now they've got Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter. We are now trying to buy off the Russians for that. And they've learned their lesson. Keep kidnapping Americans. I mean, again, I don't want to be cold-hearted about this, but this is what happens when you negotiate with terrorists. You negotiate with terrorists, and terrorists go, this is good. In Colombia years ago, back in the 90s, when the Colombian, was it the FARC, I think, in Colombia, the basically terrorist group, but the drug group, terrorist group, they put a higher, when I was there, they told me what the price was. I visited Colombia in 1996, beautiful, wonderful country. But we had to be careful because of guerrilla movements and stuff. And they put a different price on the head of different Americans had the top price. I think we were 2 million or something. Italians, I don't remember if Italians were number 2. Some other European government was number 2. And then the other ones were lower down. And it was based on the degree to which those governments were willing to negotiate and how much they were willing to pay. And they knew the American government would pay more. And so therefore, the price on American heads was more, like $2 million to kidnap an American. So we were more at risk. Anyway, like I said, I get it from a sympathetic point of view. You don't want Brittany sitting there. But Jesus Christ. I mean, this is the danger you set up. A Chinese peace envoy arrived in Ukraine today. China's traveling to Ukraine, to Russia, to Europe, the rest of Europe, to promote this peace proposal. Their peace proposal is garbage. It's basically pro-Russian. I'm not sure why China's doing this, although I think if you look at what China's doing in the Middle East too, my suspicion is it's part of the larger Chinese strategy to tell the Americans and to tell the Europeans, we're here and we're not going away, right? They got involved in the sort of peace proposals in the Middle East with regards to Iran and Saudi Arabia and all of that. And now they're kind of playing the same game here. I don't think the Chinese think there's any chance. I mean, China is a partner of Ukraine of Russia in this war. So I don't think there's no chance there's zero chance that the Ukrainians think China is going to negotiate something fair to Ukraine. They're not. It's like the Russians negotiating with you, but it's interesting they're trying. Another important story, Lukashenko. Lukashenko is the dictator that runs Belarus, which is the country up here, former Soviet, unfortunately, nice people, bad dictatorship, very bad dictatorship. They are good buddies, their leader, Lukashenko, with Putin, the Russians. He appeared at Putin's little May Day thing or May 9th Day celebration last week. He was clearly very ill there. His hand was, or whichever hand was bandaged, I think is right. He's been missing for several days. He's clearly sick. And they sort of put him out publicly today. He looked like a wax figure and his voice was talking like this. I mean, you have to listen. Even not speaking Belarusian, you hear him talk and you hear him talking like this. He sounds horrible. important because obviously it's a big puppet state for the Russians and everything. Thank you, Hazel, for the money gun. Turkish elections. So the Turkish elections were yesterday, and what happened? Thank you for that. Who was that? I saw that. I wanted to say the substitute teacher. Thank you for the kind words. The Turkish elections were yesterday. No one won. In Turkey, you've got to get 50% of the vote or more. These are the presidential elections. 50% of the vote or more, or there has to be a runoff of the top two people. There were more than two candidates. The prime minister, the current president, Erdogan, did not win, thank God. And there's going to be a runoff now between Erdogan and the number two, the top opposition figure. The top opposition figure is clearly more pro-NATO, is clearly more anti-Russia, I would say, so that in general it's considered, and he's more pro-democracy. On all fronts, it would be a good thing. So let's see what happens. Again, it's not for 2 weeks. So, and finally, I'm bringing this up because it's funny, but it also shows how things are changing in Europe. Listen to this. A day after Poland's move to rename Kaliningrad is, I won't show you my map again, but you guys can Google it. Kaliningrad is a Russian territory. They stole it at the end of World War II, I guess from Poland, although it was Germany at one point. It was Prussia, so that whole stuff confuses the hell out of me. But bottom line is, of course, the Russians stole it at the end of the war, and they now have, at least for now, have a chunk of Russia that's in the middle of Europe. And if you go to the map, it's the strangest thing. Go to the map and look at Poland and look at sort of northeastern Poland, and you will see this chunk of land called Kaliningrad. And you'll see Kaliningrad surrounded by Poland and surrounded by Lithuania. It's actually a chunk of Russia. It's on the water, which is very helpful to Russia, right? On the Baltic, I think it's the Baltic Sea, right? That you guys call it up there. Right across Sweden. Very helpful for the Russians. Well, Poland a few days ago, it was German. That's what I was going to say. It was German, but wasn't it? Oh, I see. Poland. Well, because Poland had their own name for it. I thought maybe it was Polish at one point too. In any case, the Russians stole it. It was German. Well, because I know it was Königsberg. I just wasn't sure whose it was first or whose it was, when the Russians took it. In any case, the Poles the other day decided to rename the territory because the Kaliningrad, because the name Kaliningrad, Kalinin, was one of the 6 Politburo members of the Soviet Union who gave the approval for the Katyn massacre of like 20,000 or so. I think it's 20,000. I don't want to get the number wrong. Polish military officials, officers, horrific murder of these guys. I mean, horrific, famous massacre in Poland, obviously. And the Germans, of course, I should say the Russians, the Soviets did it. The Soviets lied about it. The Soviets literally pretended, who were mostly the Russians, pretended like it was the Nazis. Oh, we don't know who did it. Must have been the Nazis. It was actually them. So the Poles finally said, you know what? We're sick of you anyway, Russia. We're sick of all your BS. And we're sick of, frankly, having to refer to this territory as Kaliningrad when he's a guy who killed our own people. He was, we're going to start calling it, and I can't pronounce the name, Krulevek, something like that. Well, the Latvians are now doing the same thing. Listen to this. The Latvians, the Language Commission has recommended using the traditional Baltic name, Karaljauchi. I'm going to say Karaljauchi. I don't know how else to pronounce it. Or the historical German name Königsberg. Königsberg is easier in English. But this is, it's another, I think it's funny. I mean, it's basically a way for those countries there to basically just screw with Russia and to basically just kind of go to needle them. And the Russians hate this kind of stuff. Absolutely hate this stuff. So, all right, let's go and take questions. I know this went late. I'm sorry. Stephen Marco, thank you, Stephen, is saying it's rumored on CNN that Wagner was going to provide Kyiv Russian information in exchange for territory around Bakhmut. That's what they're saying. Yeah, that's what they're saying. I mean, the thing is that I don't know if we know it's true, right? This could have been Prigozhin actually playing both sides to say, or it could have been Putin, because Prigozhin at least was very close to Putin. This could have been Putin working with Prigozhin and going, hey, I've got a plan. We're going to do an ambush for the Ukrainians. Start giving them helpful information, and then we're going to slip them this really bad information, and it's going to get them caught in some kind of an ambush or something. So we just don't know, but it could be, but we just don't know. All right, let's do questions here. Let's talk about that really quick. BMW guy saying, don't forget the Soviets liberated almost all of Europe at the end of World War II. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. I think we all know who liberated Western Europe. Western Europe, right? We know who liberated it. I mean, I don't want to leave some of them out. Canadians, Americans. I don't want to forget the Brits, of course, but were there not? I'm trying to remember. Help me out here on D-Day. On D-Day, were there not two other lead countries? Was it like Belgium and somebody else, or maybe Free French even? But there were two, I think Free French probably, and somebody else, right? There were two others. There were two others that we helped liberate, that helped us liberate Western Europe. So that's not true because we liberated Western Europe. The Soviets, by the way, it was the French and then America, UK, French. Was Australia there for D-Day? See, that's what I mean. I knew I was going to forget somebody. Australia, New Zealand. Sorry. I knew there was somebody else. That's why I was saying it. I remember there were at least 5 invasion forces on the beaches, or 6. So there you go. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, guys. But what the Soviets did, just because people either promote this as propaganda, which is a lie, or they don't know the truth, and it's important to get it out there. The Soviets, when right before World War II started, reached a secret deal with their friend Adolf Hitler, called part of it was public, part of it was secret, the Molotov-Ribbentrop pact. And it basically said, the Soviets said, we won't invade you, Hitler. If you go and take over half of Europe, Western Europe, we won't touch you. We will let you do it and just go have a gay old time. This is for Roshan. Roshan wanted the map. All right, Roshan, you got your map. Thank you for that, Stephen, by the way. You just have a gay old time and you just start World War II and take over half of Europe. Sayonara. Enjoy your Nazi conquest. But leave us alone because we're going to take the other half of Europe. We're going to hold, half. I don't even know what the what was the population of Eastern Europe at World War II? 50 million? I don't even know. We're going to take Eastern Europe totally hostage after the war. And boy, are they going to be in for a surprise. And that's what the Russians did. The first 2 years of the war, the Soviets, who were basically the Russians, had a pact with the Nazis, refused to touch them because they were their friends. And the Nazis had promised that if they went all Nazi on Western Europe, the Soviets could go take over Eastern Europe, divide Germany in half, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Baltic states, as far as the areas they didn't have yet. And Yugoslavia doesn't count, and Albania don't count because we're talking about, well, they're different. Albania-ish, Yugoslavia, no, not when you're talking about the Soviet bloc. Even Albania was a little bit independent in its own really scary way. But all of those countries became Soviet dictatorships and Soviet satellites. And when they tried to have their own democratic uprisings, the Soviet troops came in and slaughtered them. Czechoslovakia, Hungary. Czechoslovakia, 56. Hungary, we were talking about this the other day, 68, I believe. I always forget the year, 68. Horrific what they did. So that's what the Soviets did. They colluded with the Nazis. They were responsible for the Nazis getting the okay. Because the Nazis, I had heard somebody was telling me about this, that the Nazis might have been a little unclear about invading Western Europe if they thought the Soviets were going to come after them. But the Soviets gave them the green light to go and commit all the atrocities they did. First point. Second point, then when the war was over, the Soviets grabbed Eastern Europe and subjugated it for 45 years. Czechoslovakia, 60. Oh, I got it reversed. I'm sorry. I know Czechoslovakia was late 60s. I know. Sorry about that. Hungary was not 50. Hungary was 53? I thought it was 56. Czechoslovakia is 68. You would know. Hungary is 53. Okay. I'm getting my dates screwed up. Sorry about that. But it was Czechoslovakia and then Hungary. Hungary and then Czechoslovakia. 56. Thank you. You're wrong on that one, Mr. Czech Republic. He's saying 53. He's saying 53. TikTok is saying 50. Okay, somebody Google it and get back to us so I get the dates right. I don't remember well enough, but I thought it was 56. Just Google it. Copies is arguing with me on YouTube. But Prague was 68. I'm Hungarian. It was 56. Okay, copies. Love you over there in Czech Republic. The Hungarians are putting their foot down and saying 56. I'm going with the Hungarians here. Google says Google, in addition to the Hungarians, say 56. Thank you, SB. We need a little break now. SB's putting up the cute little gift so we can break from our argument. So yes, 56 and 68. There you go. All right. The point, let's all come together here. The point is the Russians grabbed half of Europe, held it hostage for 45 years. These people were under the worst communist dictatorships. What they did to these people in these countries, horrific what they did to these people. I mean, not North Korea, practically North Korea, what they did to these people. Much worse than I would say than what China is even doing to their people. Actually, way worse than what China is doing. So when somebody says, oh, and then finally, a big part of the reason the Russians, the Soviets, by the way, the Soviets, which include the Ukrainians, by the way, the Ukrainians had a role here too, were able to, well, they didn't liberate. They didn't liberate at all Europe. They didn't liberate anybody. The Soviets, actually, let's now be really specific. The Soviets didn't liberate anybody from the Nazis. The Soviets created a bunch of new dictatorships. So they didn't liberate anybody. But the reason they were able to help defeat the Nazis is because guess who provided the Soviets with like 15,000 tanks, tens of thousands of jeeps, vehicles, radios, food, trains, all sorts of supplies they needed. Hello, the British too. And I don't want to knock off some of the other countries because I'll bet you Canada and some of the others helped too. But it was the US number one, the Brits, and others with Lend-Lease. So I'm sorry, but especially what the Soviets did with taking Europe hostage, they get zero credit. I'm sorry, literally, it's, you see a woman getting mugged, you see a woman getting kidnapped, and you kill her kidnapper and say, I've freed you, and now I'm going to make you my concubine in my basement for the next 50 years. That's what the Russians did to Europe, quite literally. They went after the murderer, and then they took the victim and said, good, you're mine now. I'm tying you up to my bed, and you're staying in my bedroom for the next 45 years. That's what the Soviets did to Europe. It was vile, perverted, and disgusting. No, I'm serious. It annoys the hell out of me when we're supposed to, because it really did. That was one of my formative experiences, was dealing with the Soviet Union and all of that. Dealing with just how bad that place was and what they did to Europe. I visited the Soviet Union, horrific place. I was there in 1984, of all times, early 1984. Nice people, but then again, lots of bad people are nice people, but horrific place. All right, you got me on a rant. Anyway, they're horrible. They were absolutely horrible. So not going to give them credit. All right, more questions. Let me go to TikTok and find your questions here. TikTok, you can put more questions on TikTok. Remember, in the Q&A link in my profile on TikTok. Oops, hang on. Here we go, Q&A. And please keep the gifts coming, the super chat questions and the TikTok gifts. Remember, they're very, very helpful because I do this full time and it helps me be able to afford what I'm doing. So thank you guys. I don't think it makes a difference. Sorry, somebody was, who is this? Malavri was asking, do you think the fact that Prigozhin denied the Washington Post story that he had, offered like a secret deal with the Ukrainians, that he denied it, does that increase the credibility of the story? No, only because if Prigozhin had done it at Putin's request, he was doing it to try to trick the Ukrainians, right? If you're trying to trick the Ukrainians, you're trying to make them think, thank you, Magical, for the hearts there. You're trying to make them think that I, Prigozhin, am secretly working on my own. I, Prigozhin, am willing to sell out my own people, to sell out Putin and the rest of them. So if the story goes public, because I need the Ukrainians to believe this, so eventually when I give them the bad information, they believe it, right? If that story goes public, I'm not going to say, yeah, I was working for Putin, because now I'm burned. I'm going to say that's a lie, because who would say it's a lie? The guy who is innocent, and could be accused of treason, right? If I'm secretly helping you, I don't want people to know. So I'm going to say it's a lie. So Prigozhin is either saying it's a lie because it's true, and he was being a traitor to Russia, or he's saying a lie because Putin had ordered him to help Zelensky and he's trying to protect his cover. He wants the Ukrainians to think that he still is on their side. So he's saying publicly, I never helped the Ukrainians. Why would I help the Ukrainians? So unfortunately, it doesn't tell us anything about which way it goes. See you, Brave Cobra. Get some sleep. U.S. gave the Soviets 300,000 trucks. It was 300,000. Yeah. I was reading this weekend about it, actually. Apparently, the radios were one of the most important. Some people were saying the radios were more important than the tanks and the Jeeps and all of that. Radios and something, and it may have been the trucks and the radios were the most important because the Soviets didn't have, they didn't have radios that had their own power source or something. So the trains too, but it didn't have a power source. So as soon as they would run out of fuel or whatever else, the radios would go off, and we provided them with radios that I guess could somehow stay going. The trucks and the trains helped them. Thank you, SB, for that. The trucks and the trains helped them get the fuel, I guess, around, and the food as well. They apparently had like horrible. We gave them so much Spam of all things that was a huge thing we gave them. Or I should say that maybe it was the Brits who gave them Spam. I always forget who, but the Spam was huge because the troops had to basically fend for their own for food, the Soviet troops. And we gave them a ton of food too. So yeah, I'm willing to share the credit, but they're still Nazi collaborators and they still subjugated Europe at the end. So after they helped us, thank you, Hazel, for that, for the shooting stars. Ashleen says, what do you think about Russia saying they will take military action against the UK? You can hear it in my voice, Ashleen. I laugh in their general direction. I believe that was Monty Python from when I was a kid. That's all the Russians. I mean, they threatened you guys. The Russians threatened you guys when you gave the cruise missiles last week. What did they do about it? Nothing. They threatened the Ukrainians, say, you better not attack Crimea. If you attack Crimea, we're going to do something bad. Ukrainians attack Crimea. Nothing happened, right? Thank you, Kathy, for the heart. The Russians for the last year have been nonstop empty threats. Now, particularly when it comes to the UK, because you guys are members of NATO. I fart in your general direction. Was that what it was? I forgot the line. Was that the line? Oh, that's hilarious. Daniel, I forgot. Was that the line though? Oh, that's hilarious. I remembered it was something in your general direction. That's hilarious. That was the line. Okay. Yeah. And the Spam, actually, and Spam too. Holy Grail. Yeah. And Spam was the big Monty Python line. I mean, we had Spam back in the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. Stop or I shall taunt you again. Now everyone's putting up all the Monty Python lines. We're in trouble now. In any case, so Britain, the UK is part of NATO. Russia's not going to touch you because if Russia touches you, they're at war with America. Russia can't beat Ukraine. Russia certainly can't beat the UK, and they really can't beat America and the rest of the NATO alliance that is now 31 countries strong that will kick their ass if they dare touch you. So Russia ain't touching you. They're just not. But this is what they do. They want to scare people because they're hoping it'll make an impact. Thank you, Down to Earth, for the hearts, the hand hearts. Appreciate that. More questions. More questions. Hang on a second here. Boop. I know. We don't know what happened to Lukashenko. Putin poisoned him. I mean, the only thing is it's not clear why Putin would poison him, but who knows? You don't know what's going on behind the scenes, If Ukraine uses, Magical's asking, if Ukraine uses those new drone distance extenders that we got them, how much further beyond 120 miles can they get? Is that a game changer? Oh, no, that's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question. I don't know how I'll have to ask Vlad that one. Now, first of all, I can ask Vlad, but he's probably going to not want to answer publicly, right? Because we wouldn't want to put that information public. But that's really interesting because I know first of all, drones that can go 200 kilometers is pretty awesome. Thank you, BJ Gator Girl. Because the whole point is I guess there's two issues here. The drone itself has to have enough power to get that far, right? So it's actually staying alive, afloat, so it keeps spinning. But it also has to have enough connectivity. Imagine Wi-Fi in your house, right? You leave the house and you're still on the Wi-Fi. Even better than Wi-Fi. not your cell phone, your regular house phone that we used to have, that some people still have, the cordless phone. You could go in your backyard and use it, but once you went a certain distance, you couldn't use your phone anymore. So the question is the same thing with the drone. How far can the drone get away and I can still control it with the controller? And when does it reach the point where I no longer can talk to the drone and now the drone's just flying and going wherever it wants? If they're already going 120 miles, now I will say this. I know that he's talking about the extenders that we helped buy the Ukrainian, or that we bought the Ukrainians. I know that for example, the extenders we got are for very particular drones. Like they specifically tell you, oh, this will work with so-and-so's drone and so-and-so's drone and so-and-so's drone. So my guess is they probably don't work with the big British drones. What I'd be curious about, thank you, user, for the heart. What I'm curious about is whether, here's what Magical's question is interesting. Are there drone extenders that would work with the British drones so that these drones not only go over 200 kilometers, but could they go 300 or 400 kilometers because the drone, assuming they've got enough power, because the drone extender would help it go even farther? I don't know. But as I said, I'll bet you it's specific to the drone. I'll bet you. Craig Prescott, thank you for the super chat question. When Sunak was asked today, who's the British Prime Minister, about Russian threats, he basically said, Russia needs to know that we are not going anywhere. We simply don't care. That's exactly it. You kind of need to do what was Obama with the brushing off the sleeve thing? I mean, they're controlled by satellite? Ah, interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, the British ones you mean. I see. Okay. That makes sense. It would have nothing to do with the way the drone extenders work then. Okay, interesting. Now, first of all, I have no idea how the drones work and how any of this works with the drones, so I don't even want to posit it. But drone integration can be extended. Interesting. I don't know. What we do, Dragon's asking about Ukraine using decoy missiles. What we know is last week, Ukraine used some decoy missiles, including some American decoys, to confuse the Russians when they were shooting the new British Storm Shadow cruise missiles at the Russians and blowing up this factory, plant, fuel depot, whatever it was in eastern Ukraine. That at the same time, they fired a couple of, maybe 3, I think, of these decoys, and the decoys went out there, and the decoys can put out a radar signal to look like anything they want. So basically, they could make it look like, thank you, Down to Earth, for the origami. They could make it look like their cruise missiles. They could make it look like the decoys. First of all, they could make the decoy look like, which they probably would do, the exact same missile. Right? So you fire an actual cruise missile, then you fire multiple decoys of the that the decoy puts out a signal that looks exactly like the cruise missile. Okay. And so now what happens? The Russians have a very weak signal from the cruise missile because it's stealthy, but they've got a strong signal from 3 other targets. They see the 3 and they think that that's the issue. They think these 3 cruise missiles are coming. So anyway, they did it last week and it worked very well. Smartly, more questions, people. 3 buttocks. People are just stuck on Monty. We say Monty Python. I know it's bastardized, but it's the way they're pronounced here. Did you hear about 500 Russians surrendering? I did not, Sky Monkey. Very cool if true, but I hadn't heard about it. The mods, the thing you got to understand, I know Muncha is upset. The problem you got to understand about the mods is we get a lot of trolls on TikTok, a lot of Russian trolls, a horrific number. And if we didn't sort of keep them at bay, it would ruin the discussion overall for everybody. And when, going after them, thank you, Timothy, for the boat. When going after them, it's not always easy. And sometimes we'll get people that are totally innocent. So last week, we had somebody, and I think he even admitted, he said, yeah, I knew when I said it, was saying something about, we had somebody before said something about Putin, basically like, oh, he's an idiot. And the mods thought they were talking about me saying he's an idiot. And they banned him. Like, that stuff just can happen. But it happens because we get so many bad people and they're coming so quickly that it can be very difficult to tell who the bad people are. And sometimes you just, oh God, famously, okay, look at me. I actually am not the one blocking in general while I'm talking. I famously, when we first started doing these over a year ago, and I was on YouTube, and we only had so many mods, so I was actually having to block people on YouTube myself. And I'm talking, and I'm going. We had a horrific I forget whether it was the sex bot or some horrible thing that we used to always get. And I went, and rather than block the person, oh, I know what it was. I was trying to make more moderators. I was like, we need more moderators. Somebody said, I'll do it, who I recognized. I went to make the person a moderator, and I made the troll a moderator. I made the bad Russian a moderator. And I didn't say anything publicly because I was like, holy crap. Because the person could go on and block everybody. I'm sitting here and I just stopped talking. I was like, no. Found them and got rid of it. But I was like, holy shit. Oh, and I blocked our top moderator as well. That was the other thing I did. I blocked our lead moderator once, and then a second time I made the Russian the moderator. So that is to say that it is not easy moderating this stuff. So sorry if you got stepped on a little. It happens. I apologize, but know why it does, because it's just very hard sometimes. That's right. The sex bot that we used to make fun of Nathan over, just because we're having fun with him, but that's funny. All right, we'll do a few more questions here. Oh, okay, I did get to yours. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about, Munch. That was the one I was talking about, exactly. The one that they found last week, which was the U.S., or at least, I don't know. I didn't say, we'll see. Maybe it's the one exactly that you said, the ADM, blah, blah, blah. But basically, yeah, that they found the parts of at least a few of them, and that the Ukrainians were using them to deflect or to confuse them when they were actually shooting the British Storm Shadow missile or cruise missile. That's what we've all heard. Yep. I don't think so. What's the chance that the CIA could flip Prigozhin? I mean, you never know, right? I mean, who knows? Who knows? This is the guy who's the head of the Wagner mercenary group. I mean, it depends what he's into. I mean, he runs a mercenary group. Maybe he thinks like a mercenary. Maybe he thinks like, you know what? This is a business. I'm here for money. And frankly, in a way, if you're Prigozhin, if in a way you want the war to keep going, wars are business for him. He doesn't want wars to end. So he'd be the last person that wanted the war over in 10 days. He'd like the war to go for 2 years, 3 years, because his guys keep getting paid, and he's probably getting paid too. He's got to be getting paid, right? And as I said, he's exactly what Martin Woods is saying. He's a mercenary, so money, right? He's a mercenary. So I'll bet you somebody's probably tried to pay him back. I mean, or pay him off. Sure. Whether it would work, who knows? I mean, you'd have to talk to like CIA people. I forgot what it is. Is it MICE, the word they use? They have this acronym that it's like an acronym for 4 different motives for people kind of turning and getting bought off. The last one's ego, money. I forget what I and C are. It's money, ego, I and C are the other two. One of them is like ideology, right? Money, ideology, and what's the C? And then ego. Stupidity. Yeah. Corruption, maybe. I don't even know maybe corruption. Is it corruption? Yeah. But in any case, so you'd have to talk to somebody who actually had experience with that, who'd have a much better sense of, could they turn him? It's possible. Or even turning him. Maybe turning him just involves giving him enough money that he occasionally gives you information. Right? You give them $1 million. Stupidity. Coercion. Now it could be coercion. You're right. Coercion probably is right, because it would be, I'm taking somebody hostage and making you do this, right? Or compromise. Any case. I mean, you can Google it and see. It's out there. You'll see if you Google it. All right. What else we got? What else? We'll do a few more. I was going to try to do I feel bad. I was going to try to do the Discord tonight, but I know we're kind of going late here, guys. So sorry. Well, you know what? Let's go to the Discord. Let's call it quits. Let's go to the Discord for a few minutes. I'm not going to go too long. But we have leftover. We did sort of our late Greek Easter yesterday, because mom had COVID over Easter. My sister wasn't here, so we couldn't do it. So we did it yesterday for Mother's Day. And I've got Greek pasticcio that I made. So it's in the fridge, so it's very easy to heat up. So what we'll do is I will do my ending of the show where I summarize the news that we covered. And then I'll go to Discord for a few minutes to hang out. It's discord.aravosis.com. You can go over, once you get in, you accept the Discord rules. On the left, all the way down, you'll see voice channels or whatever, and you'll see John's after party. That's where we're going to be. I will be talking. Turn up your volume so you can hear me. You guys will type. And let me summarize the news and go over there, okay? It's day 445 of Putin's 10-day special military operation. Russia attacked the hometown of the Ukrainian Eurovision contestants 10 minutes before their show. Land in Ukraine is finally drying up, meaning the Ukrainian counteroffensive is coming. Bakhmut, over the last week, the Ukrainians did advance and take some of the territory back. Russia either shot down 4 of its own planes this weekend or the Ukrainians shot them down. Either way, it was a huge embarrassment for Russia. 2 Russian military commanders were also killed in the last few days in eastern Ukraine. Zelensky visited London, Paris, Bonn, Germany, and Rome. In Britain, he was promised some long-range drones and missiles, flight training. France is going to train and equip several Ukrainian battalions with armored vehicles and tanks, among others. Germany gave them an award. Thank you, Hazel, for the good evening. And the biggest arms package that it's given so far. 30 additional Leopard tanks, 20 armored fighting vehicles, and a lot more. The German one was considered especially good. Russia claims they downed a Storm Shadow British cruise missile that the Ukrainians were using, but nobody believes them because they lie. And I mean that not sarcastically, but literally. They just lie about this stuff, so there's no reason to believe them. Several drones Ukrainian drones have struck a Russian airbase 150 kilometers or 90 miles into Russia, and they claim they've heavily damaged a Russian transport plane. And a Ukrainian collaborator working with the Russians in the eastern province, Ukrainian province of Luhansk, was blown up in a resistance bombing of him, injured. Russia has arrested a former U.S. embassy employee, but possibly, I'm thinking they're a Russian, but we'll see. I think it's a Russian, not an American, but the U.S. will still be possibly interested in helping, which is why Russia did it. China sent a peace envoy to Ukraine. Nobody should take them seriously. The dictator of Belarus, Lukashenko, is ill, made an appearance today that he sounded really bad. The Turkish elections were yesterday. Nobody got 50% of the vote, so the presidential elections will go to a runoff in 2 weeks. And Poland, right after Poland decided to rename the Russian province of Kaliningrad, which is in Europe, the Latvians decided to do the same thing and rename it just to be obnoxious to the Russians, which was very funny. All right, that's it. We will go over to my Discord. Go check it out, discord.aravosis.com. You guys can find the link as well in my profile on TikTok. Just click the Linktree link. The first thing that comes up in my Discord, click it. Same thing for you guys, aravosis.com at the bottom of the screen. Click it, and you'll see my Discord link. We'll go over maybe 10 minutes, and I'll go and hang out there and chat. I don't want to go too long, like I said, because this has already been an hour and a half. And we did 4.5 hours this weekend of Eurovision watch party, by the way, which was very fun. But okay, guys, go join me in the Discord. And remember, we've got the really cool stuff we're auctioning off in the Discord, so don't forget that. Go check it out. The auction, 6 different auctions, and Wednesday, half the money goes to support Ukraine, half the money goes to support my work. Both very good causes, so thank you. All right, guys, see you, Jillian. All right, I'm going to sign off. See you over at the Discord. Thank you all. You guys